Jane VanVooren Rogers, host and writer and editor, and I am so thrilled to be here today with Ashleigh Renard, author of Swing, a memoir of doing it all. So Ashleigh, welcome. Just so glad to have you here today.
Thanks for having me, Jane. Excited to talk to you.
Absolutely. I know that we're going to have a lot of material to cover. Your book is great. And we were just saying, Ashleigh was just saying before we hopped on that someone had told her that this book was like 4 books in one. It covers a lot about marriage, relationships, motherhood, my big fat Greek wedding and marrying into a Greek family, and so many different issues. I'm just going to give a quick disclaimer, just if there are folks listening who have small children around, this may be the time you might want to pop in your earbuds, or maybe listen to this a little bit later, or send your kids to go watch a movie or something like that. We will be discussing some adult subject matter, and just wanted to give some fair warning about that. So Ashleigh, there is so much in this book. Where would you like to start?
Well, I would love to start right where what you just mentioned, that an agent told me that this book was like 4 different books in one, and that she would love to pull it apart. And she didn't even want to start with the sex part. Okay, so the first scene in my book, I am standing in line waiting to go to the bathroom at an invite-only sex party in New York City. We had to send in full body photos, headshots, and a relationship bio. My goodness, right? A relationship bio to get on the guest list. And I knew, even as I was living that moment in real life, I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually where the story starts if I ever write this. But
Wow.
the agent was so in love with, well, she saw a lot of potential in like this spiritual journey as a mother, in overcoming perfectionism after growing up in a sport, figure skating, where trying to be perfect is the name of the game. That she thought, okay, what if we just start with like the perfectionism book, and then we write the spiritual motherhood book, and then maybe we get to the sex stuff. And I was like, I don't know why, but I know that this has to be my first book.
That's really great. And I love that you stuck to your guns on keeping it all together rather than pulling it apart, because I think that would be, like you said, that would be a very different experience if you had pulled this book apart into 4 separate books.
Yeah, I think it would be. And I think that it would be a poorer representation of who I really am and how I really roll on a daily basis. When I was finalizing my back cover copy for the book, I was struggling with how to write my about the author section, because I had just retired from coaching figure skating 18 months before. Until then, I had spent 6 days a week on the ice for 30 years straight.
Oh my goodness.
So I was like, wait a minute, who I think I am and who my audience actually sees me as might be 2 different things, right? Or 5 different things. So I actually polled my Instagram audience, and they're fabulous. I check in my Instagram stories several times a day, and people meet me there, So I get tons of story reactions, direct messages. For our writing audience here, I get better engagement on my Instagram stories than I do even from my email newsletter. It's just the place where my community just meets up to like see what's going on in a day. And in a day, I might be talking about a new vibrator, and I might be talking about my favorite way to make chicken stock, and how I'm coaching my kids' soccer. So one of the people I got hundreds of responses, and they were funny and great. And even a fellow writer said, "Can I take a real stab at this?" And she wrote it for me, actually, what ended up on the back of the book.
Oh, wow.
But one of my male followers said, "You know what? You're like a hot Dr. Ruth who makes soup." And I was like, yeah. So yeah, we do need to have it all together, because it is a lot, but like that's just how my brain works, like jumping back and forth between those things. And also, so my kids, my kids get to see a lot of that on a daily basis. I'll be pausing them and saying like, wait a minute, I just heard you say that word. Do you know what that word means? Family meeting, everybody in, let's talk about what that means, what that is. Okay, now we're moving to this. Oh, and I need you to wash the floors. Like, everything moves at a fast pace over here.
Well, I think that's reassuring though, because I think that, most people and definitely most women's lives are probably the same way, that we're not necessarily allowed to just separate, all of these things into neat little categories and boxes. Everything rather kind of blends together, bleeds together, and you figure out sort of how to make all of those aspects of you and your life work.
Absolutely. And I mean, why would we want to just be one thing or another? So I coach synchronized skating. So my job was to make 20 adolescents look exactly the same and do the same thing at the same time. And the way I was the most successful doing that was when I was able to identify the unique differences in my athletes and help them embrace those differences. It was then that this synergy actually clicked. It was then that they could rely on each other and be there for each other. Like, I think that when we understand more about what makes us unique, if we understand more about how we are different from other people, whether that's how we're different from another writer who we really admire, or different from a neighbor, or different from our spouse, or different from our children. Like, I talk about my kids' differences all the time in a way. I hope I'm not breaking too many rules from like that Siblings Without Rivalry book that I try to read every couple of years, but I can't get through it. I hope I'm absorbing a little. I compare their differences in a way that I hope highlights how they're all strong at different things, and how they all look at the world in different ways. And my kids are 8, 12, and 14. So like, this is just, there's still so much to be revealed in who they are and how they are going to approach the world. But I like to point out that, yes, we are doing different things, or people aren't doing what you would like them to do right now, because we are not the same people, and with so much of our lives on social media right now, well, not just as of today, but here we are like 5 or 10 years into this, that cookie cutter, this is how you have a great life as a wife and a mother, drives me batty. So allowing people to just see, the ups and downs, and how I talk about marriage, because of the 19 years that I've been with my husband, we've been happy for like maybe 5. So that's why I like talking about, because marriage is like, it's such a setup. It's such a setup. And I think divorce is like the most fabulous idea in a lot of situations. And even if we would have split up and our story would have turned out differently, there still would have been gifts. There still would have been blessings. There still would have been incredible lessons that the two of us would have learned, that our children would have been able to learn. Where we are right now, our relationship is better than when we were dating. Like, I mean, I never actually thought that I would have a relationship this good in this lifetime. So I'm really grateful that we stayed together, but I'm not even dictating to people that like staying together is like the best thing or the promised land.
Well, that's really interesting. And again, thank you just for, being willing to share about you and your husband's relationship. Obviously, you go into a lot of, detail and in depth about that in the book. But sorry, I'm getting a little echo here. Hopefully that goes away. But just the fact that being able to admit that, of like, I've been in a marriage for almost 20 years, but only 5 of that has been happy. I mean, that's quite a thing to admit. And then when you say about divorce, like, can we go back just for a second? So when you say that you think that's a fabulous idea, I'm sure that many people are like, what? Like, because that can be a really painful and traumatic thing for a lot of people. And I personally have been through it. So can you just expand on that a little bit? Why do you think that that sometimes divorce can be a great thing?
So I don't want to be flippant in this. And I also because I have never been divorced, I want to say, like, these are things that I imagine and see. What I have been through over and over and over is when I think there's only one right way to do something, I'm setting myself up for struggle and constant self-shaming. Because so often the one way that I identify first that I think things should be done, so often is the highest level of difficulty. So often it's not actually healthy. So often it's not actually what I truly want. It's just something that I think is going to check a box or give me a gold star or make other people proud of me, or let me feel some validation or admiration from other people. So one of the things in the book that I started doing, okay, so this was pre-pandemic. I was homeschooling on purpose, had just tripled the size of my business, miserable in my marriage, but as a figure skater, I had trained myself very early to ignore what my body was telling me, to ignore what my mind was telling me, to be smarter than my emotions, like, oh, I'm tired. Oh, I'm cold. Oh, there's blood running down my leg. Well, you still have work to do. So those things that set us up to be an elite athlete, or, it happens for musicians, it happens for dedicated students. It happens so easily in so many ways. And maybe someone in our life just dangled a carrot in front of us once, and then we keep just dangling our own carrots and we go, 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 go. But I had become so good at ignoring what was really going on inside me and just making everything look great, that when I realized I was miserable in my marriage, it was like a switch flipped. But then I realized I could think back over a decade and be like, oh yeah, I haven't been happy since then. But as far as just slogging through every day and just going through it. So one of the things I did in my book was I started just doing the thing I most judged other women for doing. And my friend Stephanie had come up with this challenge. And the way she started acting it out was she just let her kids watch TV for an entire day. Okay. So because she would always be like, thinking that she had to entertain them, do this, do that. There's, I can't give them that much screen time. She just turned on the TV and she just let it play all day. So what I did, the first thing I did was, so I was homeschooling, running my business, and I didn't have any childcare. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to pay someone else to watch my kids so I can work, because I had this really, really off-base snobby idea. Oh, that must be so nice to like go to an office and work. Okay. So whenever you hear, for me, especially whenever I hear that really snide part of my inner critic talking, I'm like, wait a minute. Okay. I need to turn on my bullshit detector, because this is like really off the charts. So that was the first thing I did. I hired a nanny, and I set an office up here. Here it is. Here it is. Love this space. I claimed it. I'm never giving this back. This is my space. I set office hours. I set some boundaries and parameters around my work. And that, it made my kids happier. It made me happier. We had a wonderful nanny who would prep meals and everything. I mean, it was just wonderful. When I let myself off the hook, I was opening up the potential for everyone else to experience a bit more joy. Because that's one of the things, when we're holding ourselves to impossible standards, guaranteed we are not showing the compassion. We are not allowing the compassion and kindness to flow through our homes, our families, the way that we would like to. Okay. If you can't give it to yourself, you're not giving it to other people. We can't. And this is where that martyr mom phrase came in, that it's like, we can't just, put ourselves at I think it's Stephen Chomsky, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but has this quote that says, you can't just put everyone else's needs in front of your own and think that counts as love?
I took a screenshot of that. I was taking a lot of screenshots toward the end and throughout reading the book, but that was definitely a page that I screenshotted too, because I think that's such a good thing to remember.
And haven't we all been in a situation as children or young adults or adults where you feel someone else doing that to you? And it's like, if it doesn't feel like love, it doesn't count as love, like, period. Like, I don't care where even that action is coming from. If you're just laying your own exhaustion and shame and dissatisfaction out on all the people who you care about, that's not very caring. It's not. So that's one of the biggest things. And that's why, like, I wanted the subtitle to be a memoir of doing it all. Because, I have a lot of privilege from, my skin color, where I was born, the way my husband and I have both been able to be successful in our jobs, all of these things. But what I want people to know is that no matter what situation we're in, if we keep moving the bar for ourselves to never, ever, ever be satisfied, it doesn't matter what we already have. All we're going to be focused on is what we don't have yet. And because of that privilege and, that work ethic that either made me attracted to skating or was fostered by figure skating, I can handle a lot at once. And I just kept piling on. And it wasn't until we got in a situation where we were, like, opening up our marriage a little bit. We thought we were just stressed. That our marriage was great, and it was, well, even better than great, because neither of us were jealous, and we just needed, to, like, blow off a little steam. We needed to be, like, in some sort of different environment. That then I started getting attention from another man specifically, and I realized, oh, wow, this is what I've been craving. And because I haven't been getting it, I've been doing all of this, adding this to my to-do list, adding this to my list of responsibilities, ratcheting up the level of difficulty in everything else that I'm doing to try to get some validation, to get some external validation. And then that's when I realized, wow, like, what I really need, I'm never going to get from all of these things that I'm trying to do. And not getting it from this other person, or even getting it from my husband, is not actually what I think is going to give me some real satisfaction.
Yeah, you make a lot of really good points there. I'm just noticing that maybe it's just me, your side of the screen's looking really pixelated to me. It might be my bad internet connection over here. So I'm hoping I hope that evens out here. But it just kind of dropped out.
I hope so. Yeah. When I look at the network quality over on your side, it looks low.
Yeah.
Mine. Okay, I'm going to just send a message to tell my kids to get off the
Wi-Fi. Just so we don't want you to look pixelated this whole time here on your side. This is your feature time here. So, but no, there's so much, like we talked about, there's so much in the book. And I guess, one thing that's popping out is sort of where do you think for you that some of the roots of that perfectionism and super high standards, do you think that was internal or somewhat external as well?
I think it was a perfect storm, Jane. I think it was a perfect storm. Honestly, this is one of the reasons I believe in several lifetimes for one soul, because I think the desire, almost the panic to prove my worth, I came in with that. I really, really believe that was right from the beginning. it's funny now that I've connected with like old babysitters and things through social media, and I've read my book, and they'll even say like, like as a toddler you were like an adult. Like it all was really, really early, even before I was skating competitively. Like, so I think it was that, I'm the oldest child. I really thought like, okay, I can handle things for my family. I can handle things, even that are going wrong in my school or with my skating teams, or like, I just expected a lot for myself really early on and was really praised for that. And like, I would say like, even that there wasn't astounding pressure from my parents to perform in school or skating. I think, this is something that I watched with my son Luke, because he is my child who's closest to perfectionist tendencies. And I noticed, Jane, that when I would ask the kids to help me with something, he would always have the quickest, most enthusiastic yes. And I found that I was asking him more often. And then after he would say yes, I would like move the needle, and I would ask him to do more and do more. And when I realized, wow, being the agreeable one can really put you in a situation where adults can really easily take advantage of you. So I said to him right on that day, I was like, bud, I just realized that I do this. And he's like, you always do that. I said, I know. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that anymore. I want you to feel my gratitude that you are so helpful, that you are so cooperative. And I don't want to take that for granted. I don't want to keep pushing you or making you feel like you haven't done enough by asking more. Just because that is naturally in your nature. So I think also that coaching other people's children for like a decade before I ever had my own was really helpful, because I don't expect my kids to be like each other, and I don't expect that I should be able to treat each one of my kids the same and get the same results with the same level of cooperation. So that I think is helpful. When our kids complain about each of them getting different treatment too, I try to own up to that, and also try to hear their complaints about how they don't think it's quite lining up with what would be fair.
Sure. Well, and I really like that part of the book where you ask your skating students that you ask the girls to talk about a way that they've improved in the last year. And can you talk a little bit about what happened there?
Yeah. So it was near the end of the season, and I'm sitting with a bunch of like 11 and 12-year-olds. All of them were under 13 when the season began. So, right, we're about in that age group. And I am having them write down some ideas for the next season as far as like music or themes that they would like for the next year's programs. And I also asked them to write down what they were most proud of for the season. So there were 20 or 24 of them, and they all wrote it down on a piece of paper. And then the person to the left of me started. And I think the first girl said she was so happy that she got faster that year. And that was like, yeah, we're nodding. And then the next skater says that she's so proud of the way the team came together in a certain way. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's not exactly the instruction, but I didn't say anything. I was just like, okay, yeah. Jane, every single other athlete in that circle gave a compliment to the team. And I was like, damn, I've been doing this for a long time, but I clearly need to get better on my method of instructing. Okay. And they handed in all their little papers before they left because they had the ideas for the music for the next season. And I started looking through them. Every single girl had written down a compliment, a strength that they had observed in themselves. And all it took was one person in the group complimenting the team for none of them to feel comfortable following their instruction from the person from the person who they are like trained to listen to most days of the week. So I saw them a couple days later, and I had the papers, and I said, so I read your papers from, and I didn't have them out, but like I had them in my bag. And I said, so I read your papers from last week. And they kind of just looked at me, and I was like, and I noticed something. I noticed that, you know, the things you wrote and the things you said were different. And they were kind of like, you know, blushing a little bit. And I was like, does anybody want to guess why? Like as a group that like, you know, that's what we did. And then little hands up, and they're like, I was embarrassed because I thought I was going to be bragging. I didn't want to think I was so great. And I didn't want to say that I got better at performance because what if nobody else thinks I did? And I was like, no. The times in our lives when we need to, like our life may depend on us recognizing our worth, recognizing our abilities, recognizing where we have made strides. Those times are usually going to be very lonely times. Those are going to be times like you need to identify your strengths and abilities and gifts, even if nobody in the world would ever agree with you. Like it's your job only to identify them, and it is your job here today to speak them out loud. And they were sitting up straighter and straighter and like nodding. And I was like, so that's what we're going to do. And if any of us feel like we need to add some sort of disclaimer on the end, we're, you know, if we're going to say, I am so proud that I got faster, you are not allowed to say, oh, but I still have so far to go. No. If you feel that urge to say something else, you say, period. And then the next person knows that they're supposed to go. So Jane, that was the giggles and the smiles from these young women when we were going around the circle, and they got to really say the things that they felt proud of. That was one of the greatest moments. And I got to then tell that story, and we got to elaborate on how we did those exercises. And then the way that they would point things out. Hey, Cheryl, thank you. The way they would point things out to each other. You know, I think that, I don't know where it came in that we thought that we could make kids be better and perform better if we like always told them they weren't measuring up. I'm not sure. If some of you didn't grow up like that, I need to have, I would love to be a fly on the wall in your childhood. Because that's what I got a lot of, you know, in sports and at home.
Yeah, well, I think you raised such a great point there too. And again, especially for girls and women, that we are so often, whether the impetus is overt or covert or whatever, that, oh, if you have an accomplishment, you really shouldn't speak about it. You really shouldn't be self-promoting. You shouldn't be bragging. You shouldn't be whatever, because whatever, you know, it's fine for boys to do that, but not you. Like, no, that's not a thing that girls do. And so again, I think I love how, you know, not only did you bring that out, you know, in the female students that you were working with, but also that you helped them to couch that that feeling that women often have, that if you say something good about yourself, you have to counter it with something bad about yourself, or couch it with, oh, I'm still learning, or I'm still growing, or because we have to appear modest at all times. That's, you know, a huge thing too.
It is. We have to appear modest, and then we're comparing ourselves to like other people's highlight reels. It's, you know, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And really a lot of people benefit from us being constantly uncertain of our worth, as far as, you know, what we're going to get paid or how much we should spend on skin cream and Botox. And I do get Botox because you just have to, you know, grant me the requisite amount of narcissism because I'm a Libra, but I talk about it. These are the things. These are the things that I pledge to my audience. If I'm being a little bit fake, I'm going to tell you I'm being a little bit fake, you know? I'm not going to be like, oh, I wrote a book about marriage because my marriage has always been great. No, it sucked. All right. I use a filter because I love how it makes my skin, look more even, because it's
I've
not
often thought, like,
naturally.
what is she doing with her skin? And oh my gosh, I have to.
No, and here's the thing: I could become a brand ambassador for a skincare line, but when people are like, "What do you use?" Okay, listen, I've used the same skincare for 10 years, but it's the damn filter I use on Instagram stories. So when people are like, "What are you using for your skin?" I'm like, just you try the filter and then ask me if you still want advice, because I think you're a beauty blogger now too. Yeah. So just being honest. It's there's nothing wrong with wanting to look nice. There's
Right.
nothing wrong even with wanting your skin. So there's nothing wrong with those things, but that's one thing that drives me a little crazy about social media is, people putting on all these airs and then acting like it wasn't scripted or it's all normal. It's not. It's all curated. It's like each one of us has the capability to produce our own reality show every day. And I think if we just know that that's what everyone's doing, and I try to be clear, like that is actually what I'm doing, then we don't wonder why we're not measuring up, because we know that people are choosing what they film. They're choosing what they share,
Okay, so dovetailing off the social media thing. So how did you first start building your audience, and what sort of suggestions do you have for people who, maybe want to be a little bit more open on social media, as far as, especially as an author, because that's definitely something that people look for in the publishing industry, is your platform. And are you building your platform, and how many followers do you have? And so if you're someone who's kind of starting from zero, or, for you, when you were starting from zero, how did you start to build that?
So I started at zero, and I only got Instagram maybe 4 years ago, I think. 4 years ago, maybe 4 or 5. For the first couple of years, I worked my butt off writing and writing and writing and trying to capture great photos. And I grew at a rate of 500 followers a year. And I really wanted to be growing more, because I really wanted to move away from skating and start sharing my writing more. And I was just like, I was racking my brain of like what I needed to do. And I was hoping everything that I posted, the next thing that I posted, would go viral so that an agent would want to work with me. And I was also a little scared that I didn't want to post the wrong thing, because what if I get blacklisted and then no one ever wants to work with me? So it was like, no pressure, right?
Right, exactly. So actually, I'm terrified to do anything, but I need to do something.
Right. I'm terrified and hopeful, constantly. Okay. I did sign with a literary agent last spring of 2020, and I was underwhelmed with that experience. And then I broke up with that agent in 5 months. So I had 45 days, Jane, where I wasn't allowed to contact any other agents. And I was like, whew, okay, I am in the free and clear right now. I can just post things that are fun. And I had been paying attention for the 2 years before that to what my comp authors were doing. Okay. 2 of my comp authors, who, only one was mentioned in my query letter, Glennon Doyle, because my book has some similarities to Love Warrior. But one of the other comps that I followed was Elizabeth Gilbert. So I turned notifications on Instagram, because Glennon and Liz are both really active there, or were then. And I kept that phone up my butt, Jane, for 2 years. And as soon as either one of them would post, I would go to the post immediately. And it was like I was on a research expedition each time. What do people like about what they are posting? Why is their audience here? Why is their audience showing up so quickly that it was like, okay, a lot of other people have notifications on too, because here we are, all these people are liking and commenting immediately. Okay. Why is this happening? What are they offering that's great? And I'm fans of both of them, right? Mm-hmm. What are people asking for that these writers are not able to offer? So Liz Gilbert, finding your purpose, following where your spirituality takes you. Okay, what if you want to do those things and you want to stay married? She doesn't offer any advice for staying married because Liz has never stayed married. Okay, Glennon Doyle, she gives advice on like just embracing your beautiful, messy life. Okay, what if you also want your kids to clean the house? Right? Now, these are, so I started noticing these things like, okay, if I had written the caption, how would I have written it differently to make it clearer what they're trying to say? And as a coach, this is what I always see. I see something and then I see the potential for how it could have been better. So I would notice these things and I would get involved in the comment section. The idea is don't try to go into your comp accounts and like steal the show. You are in there just collecting information so that you can become more certain about the need for your story and your voice in the world, because there will be gaps in what this writer is offering and what their audience wants from them. And where those gaps intersect with your unique brilliance, bingo, bingo. So another thing, Glennon Doyle doesn't give sex advice. Until very, very recently, she never talked about sex. Now she's talking about it on her podcast a bit because I think she's noticed her audience really wants it. I was a kid. I was talking about this on my Instagram stories last night. When I was 10 years old, my favorite way to spend an afternoon was to sit down my friend's mom, whatever house I was at was fine. As long as I was at a friend's house and a mom was there, I would sit them down at the table and ask them their favorite method of birth control. And I would ask them about, whether they waited there until they were married to have sex or waited until they were like, that was such a blast for me. And it wasn't until my 20th.
I saw that post too.
And then poor Jamie. At my 20th high school reunion, my friend Jamie says, do you remember when you used to sit down my Catholic mother and ask her about condoms? And I was like, yeah, that was like one of my greatest memories. She was like, that was embarrassing, Ashleigh. But so when I'm looking at, okay, what does the audience need? What do I already talk to my friends about all the time? Oh, I always talk about sex, even if it's a new friend, somehow we're talking about sex from like the second time we meet, because that's just something I like talking about. And not really a part of my personality that could be public when I was coaching children's sports, right? So the way to I just started then making content based on, what would be fun to say? What's something that I said in my stories like 6 months ago that people still ask me about? Because I would show up and I would do these things in my stories. Stories for me is like workshopping an essay. It's like workshopping a new idea. I'll just throw something out there that's just like in the forefront of my mind and then just see how people react to it. So then when I started taking some of these ideas that I had talked about with my audience in the stories and making them into videos, this is right when Instagram launched Reels too. And then my 11-year-old said, oh, your Reels are doing pretty well on Instagram. Why don't you just post them to TikTok? And I was like, I don't know how to post to TikTok. And he's like, I'll be your manager. Okay. So Jane, so I've been growing by 500 followers a year. In those next 45 days, I got 55,000 new followers.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And since then, I've averaged 1,000 new followers a week on Instagram and 1,000 new followers a day on TikTok. It's crazy. It's so wild.
Phenomenal.
It's so wild because, and this is what I want everybody to know. It doesn't matter if you're talking about sex or not talking about sex, okay? It doesn't matter if you've got a blonde bob and whatever. It doesn't matter. If you can figure out what your audience needs that they're not getting, and you can figure out a way to deliver that in a way that keeps their attention, bingo, you got it. So I just started taking on one-on-one clients, writing clients, and either 30 or 90-day coaching plans. I run their social media like I would run my social media. Okay, so we posted our first reel a few days ago, one of my clients. She's 60. She's not very comfortable with tech. Her subject matter of her book is really serious. She has about 200 followers on Instagram. Her first reel that she posted got over 3,000 views in the first 3 hours.
Wow.
Okay, just because as a performer, I know, as a performer and as a writer, you cannot take your audience's attention for granted. If you don't hook them and every single word, keep them there, give them a reason to keep reading, they're going to swipe away, or they're going to put the book down and not buy it off the shelf, right? Same thing in video. And it was the same thing if I wanted to impress judges on the ice with my choreography. That opening position had to be great. And then it had to be like, you're taking the judges of the audience on an emotional journey. You're doing that in an essay. You're doing that in the chapter of a book. You're doing that in a 30-second TikTok video. Whether you want to make them laugh, or you want to make them take action politically, or you want them to forward it to their partner because they both are wishing they could have better sex tonight. You have to have like an idea of like, okay, what do I want this person to feel, or what do I want them to do? And as writers, we do that all the time. We do that all the time, especially, creative nonfiction, but like novelists do it too, right? If you want to pull someone into a new world. And what I'm actually offering a class for lounge writers in a couple weeks, where I'm going to take literary essays like The Crane Wife, and I'm going to make them into a TikTok. Like, what would I do if that was my piece and I wanted to present that information in a 30-second video? Because I think video is really what makes the algorithm happy right now. And Instagram does such a good job of just copying the features that are on every other platform and somehow getting us to just go over there to consume them. So Instagram's even said a few weeks ago, it's not primarily a photo sharing app anymore. They're really pushing video. They're pushing it out. And the thing is, they push it out to people who aren't already your audience. So it's the ability to attract new people. One other quick tip for people: I use hashtags to not categorize my posts that I'm making, but I use hashtags to attract my ideal reader. So I may be talking about marriage, but I may put hashtag chore chart, hashtag my KonMarie, like the Marie Kondo method of tidying up. Because quite often when parents are overwhelmed with the state of their house and are thinking, I just need to get more organized, they'll find one of my videos and go, actually, my marriage kind of sucks. Like, it wasn't that I needed stuff from the Container Store. It's that I need to start having better conversations with my spouse. But there's just like, so I try to bring people to me who didn't even know they were looking for content like mine.
Well, and it sounds like a lot of those people are finding you, both from your book and your social media, that they're then thanking you, like, thank you so much for writing this book. It's enabling me to have, conversations with my spouse that I wasn't having before. And it sounds like you're getting a lot of stories and a lot of feedback about that.
I am getting so many stories that this is one of the reasons I'm going to be launching a podcast the end of October. I have an average of 80 conversations going to my direct messages a day.
Wow.
80. Because once people see one of my videos, sometimes they haven't even spoken to their spouse about it yet, but they're like, okay, that made me think of these other issues I've had. And like, I just feel like I could tell you and you're not going to judge. Like, this is something I think, Jane, I honed coaching adolescents, because coaching adolescents is like trial by fire, like to be a stand-up comedian. Okay, you have to disarm your audience. You have to get them to play along. You have to like you're on the same team. You have to deliver what you want, and then you have to make them laugh. Or in my case with the skaters, like get them to then go execute the counter turn in the way that I wanted them to. So in a 30-second video, I can disarm people. It's like I'm talking about the weather when I'm talking about, a position for orgasms. And I make them feel like, oh, it's all fine. We can talk about this here. And they have that feeling then coming into my inbox that, oh, I could tell Ashleigh this and that would be safe. That would be okay. So, or the couple reads it together and then something else comes up about maybe past infidelity or this or that. And about 25% of my audience is men, but 70% of my messages are from men. I think because they don't know who else to talk to. I think that, they can't talk to their friends super easily about it. A lot of them have said, they have a therapist or they've gone to therapy, but like, I don't know. I think that is a really interesting part of this. I didn't know that men were going to read my book. There are single men who are reading my book. There are couples who are reading my book together. So I love that so many cases when a man sees my video and sends it to their wife, then I will see, say somebody likes my video, someone with the same last name will like my last 10 videos and then follow me. And then they're both following me together. So it's like this interesting, my husband and I talk about this and he gets a laugh out of it too, because he really thought that people were gonna think he was a really shitty guy from reading the book. And everybody's on team Manny. Like everybody loves Manny. And,
they're cheering him on when he's buckling the baby into the car seat. I love that. Like, oh, they're ready to give him a parade and all this. And that's such a great point, just that does happen a lot. But I'm sorry, go ahead. But people love him, but he was afraid. Was he afraid just then that people would think?
He thought, okay, people are going to think I'm an asshole. And I was like, yeah, but I'm really the biggest asshole in the book. So don't worry. Like if anybody's the biggest bad guy, it's me. So he was.
Okay, wait, pause. Why do you feel that way?
Well, I think any good memoirist is harder on themselves than anyone else. I think that's the only way that you can really talk honestly about the other characters, the other people in your story, is if the reader feels like you're bringing that level of honesty or higher to your assessment of your own behavior. So
you're willing to put yourself under, and you do. I mean, you put yourself under that bright spotlight as well. And, it's like, well, okay, so maybe he said this, but I wasn't saying this, or he said this, but I was just kind of downshifting and, going with the everyday flow of raising our kids and us tag team parenting and dashing off to jobs and things like that. So
and I think that, hey, Robert, thank you for that. I think that's why couples are enjoying the book together, because they can look at it and go, I relate to that. I relate to that. Oh, this is how I actually felt that time when I couldn't actually tell you how I felt, but that rubbed me the wrong way. And because Manny doesn't appear on my feed very often, just because he and my boys don't like being on video. And this is really about me telling it from my perspective. So I don't need that whole cast of characters all the time. And I really don't want to orchestrate my family's days to have them fit into my social media. That is definitely not part of the, my play here. That is not something that I want to do. We just live our lives. I love checking in on social media a lot, especially during pandemic, because it's I'm hanging out with people I like. But I think what people see is that, okay, and right in my bio, it says Rehab to Shabby Marriage, wrote a book about it. So it's oh, okay. So even if something looks good on the feed, it's not like they're pretending it's always been like that or that's effortless, right? And the fact that we're still together, and I mean, when people say, hey, did you cheat on him? Did he cheat on you? I'm like, read the book and then let me know, because we're not in agreement actually on whether both of us cheated. So when I say that, then people are like, oh, okay, because people can relate to that. Because listen, whether somebody is faithful or not, that's a gray area. And so many people have been in that situation where, say, their spouse is texting someone from work and it just doesn't feel right, but there's not an actual line that's been crossed. So just being able to have a conversation in those gray areas is, I think, what a lot of people are appreciating.
Well, and I think you really cover that well in talking about, the emotional affair, that you were having, later on, that even when you were no longer in contact with this person, you were still longing for them and really feeling like, oh, maybe this was the big opportunity that I missed, and maybe this was supposed to happen. And I think that sometimes people are, sort of haunted by those kinds of things. And even though, they may be married, that, sometimes those kind of situations can happen, like you said.
The one that got away, right? Or the one that in the book, his name is Brad, but for a while on social media, I just called him the sweet talker. And a man I totally fell in love with, and he fell in love with me too. I mean, it was obvious right off the bat to his wife, to Manny. Manny didn't seem to care though, which that was awkward. So, and even Brad's wife was still trying to be my friend. And I felt really shitty that I couldn't be a friend to her because I was really just wanting to jump her husband's bones. Like all these things that were like incredibly awkward, but that people can relate to. So when I used to call him the sweet talker, I would get a flood of messages every time I would do a post saying like, I have a sweet talker. I have a sweet talker. It was like Oprah, like reverse Oprah. Like, I have a sweet talker. I have a sweet talker. Everybody has a sweet talker. Right? Because it is such a common thing. Married life is so damn hard. And I swear it's harder than it's ever been, even though we have, more privilege and freedom in so many ways. The things we expect out of our spouse and the things we expect out of ourselves. And like, even just, I think it was a line out of like Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In when she was talking about the different number of hours in the 70s that a stay-at-home mom would spend with their children. I think it was like 17 hours a week. They had hands-on time with their kids. And then in the 2000s, women who work outside the home 40 plus hours a week are still spending 17 hours hands-on with their children. So it's like, oh, if we feel like the walls are coming in, it's because they are, right? Like we're expecting more out of ourselves than ever before. We're expecting more out of ourselves and our partners than ever before. Some of the things I think are really healthy. Some of the things like the equality in a home and the actual emotional intimacy that you have with the spouse. Like, I think these are really great. These are moves in the right direction, but a lot of us haven't had that modeled to us. And I think that's another reason that when I'm talking about like, oh yeah, marriage sort of sucks. Like, let's try to figure out a way for it not to suck. Then people are like, okay, I like this chick. Like, I want to hear what she has to say.
Well, and I know that that was a page of your book that I really, resonated with as well, just when you were describing those differences and how marriage originally, was a business arrangement. And, if you got lucky, maybe you would learn, or grow to love each other. Then, it became more of like companionate marriage, maybe more in like the, 60s and 70s. And then now it's almost like the definitions of what a spouse is have changed so much from, I mean, even just probably in the 60s and 70s of, no, it's not just this, it's, you have to be, my emotional support and my physical support. And you have to, it's more like, I had read this one time where it's more like coaching. Like you want someone by your side who's going to coach you to become the best version of you. And it's like, wow, that's a totally different thing than just, having somebody to go to the movies with on a Friday night.
Right? Yes. And I think that, again, we see these like hashtag marriage goals, couples like very tanned couples with like a great preset that makes it look like, they have nothing but skylights over their whole house. And like, it's just the preset, people. Nobody has that much natural light in their house. Okay. White isn't actually that color. But we see them, like, the man standing at the kitchen counter and the woman has her long tanned legs around him. And like, you're just thinking like, oh yeah, they just can't keep their hands off each other. Right. And they live in this $1 million house. And their kids are always dressed. Okay. None of this is real. None of this is real. And the thing is, I actually adore my husband now. And we hug probably 20 times a day. And I adore my kids. All of these things started to come together when I let myself off the hook for all the other shit. When I said, okay, you know what? Not only am I going to have a nanny, I'm going to send my kids to school. I am like basically going to just go into like, Superman's like, is it the Fortress of Solitude, the place that he goes to? So. Okay, so that's what I did for like 2 years. I meditate. I swear I meditated 4 hours a day that I actually did other shit because I was so unhappy, Jane. I was so unhappy. And I was like, you know what? Manny, feed the kids, get them on the bus, whatever. I showed up at work because I still was coaching young women and I had to like try to support them when I it was dark. And I allude to that a bit in the book, how dark it was, but it was even darker. I was like scared, like, is anybody going to want to read it if they realize how depressed I was? So probably in my next book, I'm going to shed a little bit more light on that. But that's where in the book, I was just sitting in meditation for months and months, not consecutively. Like I would sleep and go to work and whatever, but every day. And I kept hearing, because I was having all of these weird physical things going on. Like I started just seeing doctor after doctor, 2 different cancer scares, like all of this stuff when I had been completely healthy for, my whole life. And I kept saying, what do I need to do to get better? And what I heard was, you need someone who loves you better. And I was like, I knew it. I knew that's why everything was so hard in my life, because my husband doesn't love me. Okay. And I was like, all right, so should I leave? And it was like, silence. Like, should I ask him to leave? Silence. Should I get another boyfriend on the side? Because like that didn't work out very well. Silence. Okay. So but I just kept showing up every day for absolutely no help that was being offered to me, but I kept showing up. And then one day it was like, you need someone who loves you better. And I was like, thanks, universe. Like I heard you the first 500 times. And then it was like, and it's you. And I burst out laughing, like I was crazy here on my meditation mat. And I was like, oh, it's me. Okay. Because I can do that. I can do that. And so I started writing myself love letters every day. Seriously, sometimes like 10 a day. They would just be like short. Sometimes I would just text myself. Sometimes it would be like a note in my phone, whatever. I was like, okay, wait, I am going to like love myself up the way I would like love up my athletes. I couldn't even say like, oh yeah, the way that a really loving parent would love a child, because I was so jaded and so demanding of myself that I wasn't even giving my kids the love that I would like to. Like I would keep it together at work, and then my rage would come out sideways at my kids. So, when people are like, just treat yourself like a loving parent, I was like, I don't even know what that is. Like, I need something else. I was like, all right, if I was like in love with myself, if I was dating myself, if I was getting messages from myself, like I used to get 100 texts a day from my sweet talker, what would I say to myself? And I just started doing that every single day. And then things started shifting. And it sounds like and then all my relationships around me changed, but they did. They did, because I actually renegotiated the relationship with myself first. And I was like, the only way I know how to quit something is cold turkey. So I tell a story in the book about how I used to be obsessed with food, like major body dysmorphia, thank you figure skating. And I would hundreds of times a day, I would calculate like how many calories and my macros, and then how many more I could, like hundreds. And one day after I met Manny, so I was like, I just turned 22, I decided I'm not doing this anymore. We are not doing this anymore. So when the thought would come into my head, I would say the alphabet in my head backwards, because that was something that I can do, but it takes a little focus. So I was like retraining my brain, like, no, we're not. And so that's what happened that day that I started writing myself love letters. I'm like, I am not going to be an asshole to myself anymore, because when I am, then I'm an asshole to my kids. And I hate my husband, and like, I kind of hate everything. So maybe if I love myself, then maybe I'll start loving some of these other great things that are around me. And that's really what set everything in a different direction.
And that's such an amazing idea. Did you come up with that idea? Did that just occur to you?
I did.
That's really amazing. And what a great way to, again, start to dig out of some of that, just being so harsh with yourself all the time, and self-criticism, and remembering every mistake and everything that you've ever said wrong. And I hate when, I feel sometimes like I've had all that kind of stuff coming to my head lately, where it's like you just remember all the bad stuff for some reason.
Oh, yeah.
And you're just like,
I used to have this idea in my head. I was like, oh yeah, that's on the top. That's on the list of like the 10 stupidest things I've ever said in my life. You know what I mean? And like one of them was when I was 3. Okay.
Right. I remember reading about
that one's in the book. It's like, oh, okay. We are going to just like repattern all of this. So what I did too was I started writing letters from people in my past who I had unresolved issues with. It was almost like I went through my own recovery. Like literally, if there's like a 12-step program for perfectionism, like I am there. Except
Yeah.
it's one of the only addictions that people covet. Like, oh, if I could be disciplined like you, if I could, it's like, listen, if I could bottle like an ounce of this stuff that is naturally inside me or inside my brain and sell it to you or even give it to you, I would, but I would not wish the full Monty on anyone. Because so it was, like when in AA, when you go through and you like make apologies to people or whatever. So in my version, I would write an apology to them or they would write an apology to me. But like most of these people were people I hadn't even seen, like weren't in my life anymore. But it had imprinted on me, like, you can't trust the things that you say. You can't trust the things that you think. You looked stupid. You were foolish. Like that wasn't okay. And normally it wasn't even me hurting other people. It was just like me. It really was foolish because it was a lot of stuff from like when I was younger. And then making me really think, oh yeah, I can't trust myself because then I'm just going to be humiliating myself and everyone around me if I just say what's on my mind. That's not safe. So really retraining my brain around those things. And so it was really
powerful.
It was, and it was really good for my skaters because my radar for self-criticism was super well tuned. So even when they were thinking something bad about themselves, I was like, that could be a way to spend your life, but like, I want better performance out of you. And like, you're not actually going to get that by putting yourself down. So you can't. And so many of us think that like, oh, I'll be better if I can just motivate myself to not be this shitty. And it's like, okay, I think that's like maybe how, like basic training works in the Army, but it's like, do we really want to break ourselves down? Because like, who's going to build us back up?
Well, and I'm guessing too that really helped to fill your own love well, that then you weren't putting as much of that on your husband and feeling so torn up whenever he wasn't saying what you needed him to say or doing what you needed him to do. That, I mean, was that how you felt?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got myself to a place, and I also had a really good therapist. So grateful that I can pay for therapy out of pocket. I got myself to a place where I was like, oh, maybe the next thing that I'm going to do that I've judged other women for doing is end my marriage. Maybe, okay, maybe, me getting my own apartment or, things like, wow, okay, that is something that I've always thought like, oh, I couldn't do, like, because of my kids, like, and I thought, oh, well, what if I did it for my kids? Because I don't want them to think that this relationship that we have, that, that I have with their father is like the standard that we want them to aim for in their intimate relationships as adults. We've got sensitive kids. They need to be loved up. They need to have conversations. They need to have a lot of physical affection. So it's like, okay. And I could already tell that things I would ask for were often a fight, especially with our oldest, Jack. But as soon as Manny would model it, he would do it immediately because he wanted to be like his dad. I could tell that he was like already imprinting this idea. And this was he was probably 10 at this time. He's 14 now. He was already imprinting this idea, like affection is for women and babies. Like me as a boy who's going to grow into a man, like I don't need that. Jane, that kid needs so many hugs a day. They all do. Because we're human. It is a human need, right? So I said
I think it's a really, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think that's a really great point too, that you also cover in the book, where the reason that your kids were thinking that was both because of how Manny was acting, but then also that's kind of a tradition in Greek families. So can you talk about that just a little bit?
So I used to joke with Manny. We had a lot of jokes that weren't funny, that he was trained his whole life to ignore the sound of a woman's voice. Growing up in a household with 2 Greek brothers, with a Greek father, all of them pretty quiet, their mom being more vocal and more emotional. It was just like, how do we tiptoe around her emotions and just do or say whatever we want to appease her and then go do the opposite. It doesn't matter if we actually do the thing. It's just about like getting her to stop in the moment, right? So yeah, and I married him. So he's a great guy, but I had to, when I got to the point that I was like, okay, maybe the next step for me on this, wild and precious life is to get divorced. I was like, okay, because I want something better for our kids. And even if neither of us meet anybody else that we're going to partner up with, I want them to say, hey, mommy and daddy did a lot of great things together, but we couldn't figure out how to have a really good marriage. So we hope you guys can figure it out and we can learn it from you because we want that for you. When I said that, and because it wasn't an ultimatum, I tried lots of ultimatums before. It was like, I say in my book, every 18 months, I would like work myself up to like throw a fit and stomp my foot. Like that's not my usual MO, but I was like, that's the only way he would listen actually, is if I was like screaming and crying. Because like I said, just trained to just ignore and just like, whatever, just try to just get out of the way of the emotions of the woman in the house. But when I said that to him that day, something happened. It was like I had been unmuted and then I was muted and then unmuted. And he was like, oh, well, no, I want, and I was like, oh, I was like already like on my way out of the room. Right. And he's like, no, but I want, babe, I want this and I want that. And I was like, wait, you have things to say about what are you talking about? I think in that moment, because I couldn't understand, and I couldn't understand for weeks because I was like, all right, I've been saying the same kind of thing for so long. But I think when I actually got to the place that I like really meant it, and I was at peace, not just at peace, I was a little excited, like, okay, what's next for me if I'm single, or if, I only have the kids half the time, like what does that look like? I think in that moment that his fear of being vulnerable and actually tapping into his own emotions became smaller than his fear of his family being in a different shape than he wanted. And I think that's what that was. I think, he grew up looking at our three kids who have very different personalities. I cannot imagine any sort of reality when my husband as a child was not super sensitive. I can't really imagine it. I would think he's probably, the most sensitive. And my father-in-law, the quietest one in the family, is like even more sensitive still. So when I think in that realization, he was like, okay, I'll go there. Okay. And the way that he's opened up his affection for our kids, I swear getting a dog was something that really changed our level of physical affection in our house, because the dog loves him, and he could easily, like, he was always really affectionate with babies, and he can be really affectionate with pets. And so getting that practice like on a daily basis of just like, oh, we love each other and we like baby each other, right? It has shifted the way all of us interact with each other, because we just, the love, like it just like, this is why super grateful he had that realization that I was unmuted that day, because now we have this love. And I talk about it in the book that like, I didn't just want love, the noun. Like for him, he was like, I told you once that I loved you. Unless I tell you otherwise, assume I continue to love you. Like love, check. Like we got that. Okay. We don't fight about money. Check. We love each other. Check. It was like we had love, like you would have like a dusty vase like up on the shelf. Like, yeah, we have that. Right?
I thought that was a great analogy that you made too.
Right? I don't want love the noun. I want love the fucking verb. I want to be loved. I want my kids to feel loved. I want to love my kids and have them love me back, and love my dog and love my husband. And like, so now like the way, and so we had a newly great marriage right before pandemic when the schools closed, and we've just been like together this whole time. It's actually been phenomenal. I mean, our kids are really fighting with each other now. They're really getting on each other's nerves. But when they are, I can just look at them and be like, oh my God, I love you that you're so different. Like and even my 8-year-old said a couple months ago, he's like, yeah, you just don't yell like you used to. And I'm like, I just don't. I just don't. Even when they're being ridiculous, it doesn't push my buttons like it did before, because I used to take it all so personally that they were trying to make life harder for me, or I had fucked up because like I hadn't anticipated that this was going to happen. And it was just like a shame fest every time my kids would fight. And now I'm just like, you guys are really annoying each other. Like, that is so clear. Like, how does it feel to be this annoyed by your siblings all the time? So yeah, it really has been, it's really a 180 in so many ways.
Well, and I thought that was, such a beautiful scene in the book too, where you're bringing that up to him. And then when he does finally unmute you and let you in, and that that he was tearful, and that he was saying that, being with you and the kids was really all that he wanted, like, out of life. And I'm sure that's the kind of dream statement that you could have only imagined these years, when he was just sort of grunting and like you said,
absolutely.
yeah, I love you, it's fine, whatever,
And then for the action, and then for his actions to show that to be true moving forward. That was the thing, because I mean, anyone can promise anything, right? And to see how we've actually been able to grow together since we've made that commitment. And I mean, it's a constant. Sometimes, and it doesn't happen very often, but sometimes he'll sort of slip back into that, like, yeah, moms are a pain in the ass, kind of like, it's almost like he slips into like an adolescent mode. And I will, Jane, I am not going backwards. I will walk out that door before I live that marriage that I lived again. Yeah. Like, no. Like, my husband deserves better. I deserve better. The kids deserve better. The fucking dog deserves better. Okay. Like, we're not going back. Absolutely. So when things will backslide a little bit, I'll be like, whoa. And I'll right in the moment, usually it's in the kitchen, I'll go, okay, wait a minute. You are acting like you are a teenager who has like a mom who won't let them stay out late. No, I am your partner. You are my partner. We are on the same team. So, and I'm not going to stay married to an adolescent. So like, snap out of that, or like, I'm not doing this. I'm not, and I'll say it just like that, and in front of the kids and in the moment. And sometimes to kind of double down, and I'll be like, no, this is reminiscent of how we did things for so long, and I am not doing this again. If you don't understand where I'm coming from, then you need to give your head like a little shake and try to see what I'm talking about, because I know I'm not crazy. That was the thing. That was the thing. And I wish I had a better word than crazy, because it is an ableist term, but I did feel for so long like I was. Like, I felt like I'm insatiable. I don't have a grip on reality. I should just feel more grateful. I really did question my sanity in like, why am I okay? Either it was my sanity, or I'm just an awful person for not being more grateful for my lovely looking life. And either of those are like not ideal situations, right, Jane? Like, which do you pick? Yeah. Which do you pick if one of those things has to be true?
Well, what were some of the positive ways that you saw him changing after that conversation? What were some of the things that he did? Like, was it a night and day, like instant change, or did it take some time?
It took some time, and it was like, I think the biggest change was he just started listening. When I was like, oh, that doesn't feel good, or oh, the way you just said that to the kid or to me, or like, or hello, I'm talking to you. Like, I need you to listen and then ask me 3 questions, please. Like, I need to really like real specifics on like, this is how I would like our conversations to flow. Like, this is the kind of, emotional intimacy and good communication that I would like to model for our children. So like, really, really specific, like, please listen and then ask me this many questions about it. Like really. And then he would be like, okay. Because he was like, he was like, when he realized that in order for us to stay together, he would have to do better. It's this, there was that funny meme a couple years ago that it's like, I sent my husband a get better soon card. And he's not sick. It's time for him to get better. It was like that when he was like, all right, I can't play this game anymore. That like, oh, women just whine and they just ask for things and like Charlie Brown's mom. Wah, 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 wah. Once he was like, okay, I'm not going to snap into that when I hear my partner speaking to me. Then he started to be like, oh, well, doing that's easy. Doing that's easy. He started, and his love language is acts of service, Jane. So when I started writing the book, for months, only he read it. And he was still working at his office then. This was pre-pandemic. So I would send him a chapter, and he knew the most loving thing he could do for me was to read it and then respond. And then he would come home from work and I would be like, I love you so damn much. And he was like, that was actually easy. Okay. Because there was this idea that
almost like fulfilling your need for words and his need to do something to help you.
Exactly. Because my love language is words of affirmation. So it was just like, when he realized, okay, this idea that women are impossible to please, so why even try, is not reality, then he could hear, oh, it's just X, Y, and Z. Oh, well, I already did X, Y, and X and Y. Here's Z. There you go. And I'd be like, it's not even that hard to have a good relationship. Just both partners have to realize they're on the same team. And then he has started to raise the bar for what he would like from me. He would say like, okay, you always do this and this. Like, could you it would be so much easier for me if you would do it this way. And I'm like, I would love to do that. I would love, we call it the complaint department. When one of us is unhappy with the way someone else does something, whether it's a little thing or a big thing, we go, is the complaint department open? And then the other person can say yes or no. Usually we say yes. I love it when he has a complaint, because like for so many years he was like, things are fine. Why aren't you just fine? And I'm like, nobody here is fine. Nobody here is fine. Okay.
Nothing is fine. We have plenty of things to talk about.
Everything is not fine.
Well, I remember that was something that came up pretty early on in the book. Is that something that you've used throughout your 19-year?
Yeah. We've used the complaint department since before we were married. Yeah.
Okay. I remember that. Is it so the complaint department is still open on occasion?
Yeah, it is. It is. And then if I'm stressed about something and he'll go, is the complaint department open? And he's like, I can tell it's not. I will come back later. And I was like, thank you. You know what I mean? So yeah, sometimes it's closed, but
I think that's a really interesting technique, though, that I could see being really helpful for couples, of basically being like, when you have a concern or, you want to give some constructive input about something, that like, again, so many times timing is everything. And so sometimes it's just like you said, if you've just had a super long day or you've got a headache or a migraine or, whatever, and you're just like, dude, I just can't, I can't entertain this right now. Right. That it doesn't make that complaint go away, but it just tables it for another time that then you're able to, address it.
It'll table it, and it allows the opportunity for feedback in the moment. He and I were both athletes. So we know, like, a coach right there at the sidelines, either if you have an earpiece or if they have a headset, whatever, giving you the instruction as you're making the error, or like, you know what I mean? That is the most effective way of shaping behavior. And we both are like, yes, I would love to shape my behavior for life to be easier for you. And you would like to do that for me, because we are on the same team, and life is way more fun when we're not like, I can't get this from him and I can't get this from her. No, like, just what can we do to make it easier and more fun? And I mean, we also, in in the way things have shifted, we have really embraced that a lot of the best practices for us are different than what you would expect with traditional gender roles. Whenever we fall back on like, oh, you should do this because those are your parents or because you're the husband or blah, 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 we always get ourselves in trouble. So what we realized was, okay, I had wanted him to talk to his mom about boundaries with religion, because I did not want our kids going to the Greek Orthodox Church. Since before we were married, I said, listen, I'm not into church, but if you are and you want that to be a part of your life moving forward, and we like that for our family, I need two things. I need a church that allows gay marriage, and I need a church that allows women to be in leadership positions. Those are my two, like that's my baseline for, is a church doing less harm than good? It has to like check both those boxes. And he was like, we can't even have this conversation. I'm going to go to the Greek church because that's what's going to make my mom happy. And like, no, we're not even talking about this. And I was like, all right, then I will not be going. Okay. So, and we were married in the Greek. I mean, that the way I got through the marriage and the baptisms of our kids, people read the book just for that. The way I had to like play that out in my mind so I could get through those days, right? Those days that are supposed to be so happy.
That you were acting, how did you put that? That you were acting like a woman?
Yeah, I was pretending that I was an actress and I was playing the role of the happy mother who was having a baby baptized in the church. And I was like, I'll show up, I'll dress up, and I will like show up, like, because honestly, I've been a performer and trained performers. And, you know, if I forget my cue to kiss the priest on the hand, like, oops, like sometimes actresses forget their cues. Oops. So I did, like, it was just, I was being really sussy in my own mind. It's a Canadian term, British term. But I was like, that's the only way I can get through it without like hating everybody who I feel like is making me be here. So I wanted Manny to talk to his mom about us making choices for our family together, because it was like there was a gag order on religion and spirituality in our marriage for the whole, like, until a couple of years ago. I wanted him to do this. I was so unhappy that he wouldn't do this, Jane. Then I was cleaning out, was doing one of my rounds of KonMari, and I was going through my closet, and I found this birth announcement, and it had a photo of our son Jack, and it had, I remembered that, okay, Manny's friend Chris, who's a photographer, took that and had his date of birth and the time and his weight, but it said, "Welcome, baby Yanni," and I was like, fuck is this? What is this in my house? I was like, then I remembered, Jane, we bought 50 fake birth announcements and mailed them out to the Greek family, saying the baby's name was Yanni, because that's Manny's dad's name, because Manny was too afraid to tell his parents that we named the child Jack.
Right.
And I went along with that. And I was like, oh, Manny actually can't have this conversation with his mom about church. His fear of what it will do to her is not rational, but I can have this conversation. So you know who has every hard conversation in the family now? I do. I was the one who told my mother-in-law that her husband had COVID. I was the one who then took his car keys when he finally did get out of the hospital and said, Papu, you're not driving until we go through all your neurological appointments. Because one of his main symptoms was he had a really high fever, hallucinations, so confused the whole time. He was in the hospital for a month and then home for 7 weeks on oxygen. When Manny's cousin, who's just a couple years older from me, she lives around the corner, she's Luke's godmother, when she died from COVID a few months ago, I told Manny, you stay here, I'm going to go tell your parents. So like that is how I can be here for this family in the chaos, in the really hard conversations. I hate having them, but I can have them because it makes life easier for my husband and my kids. And I always tell them the hard conversations I'm having. I tell them what I'm going to tell the other person. I tell them how it goes, but I can handle that for us. I can. Meanwhile, in pandemic, Manny has fed the kids every single meal. So it's like, you know, because you know what, he's half Greek woman, Jane. I'm not ever gonna fuss over those kids enough. He's gonna want to fuss over them a little more. So just fuss over me too. Can you bring lunch up to my office?
Right.
So, and And the way, since I had this conversation with my mother-in-law about, listen, this is what I need to tell you about where Manny and I are in our marriage. And I told her about Brad, and I told her about Amber, and I told her about, we are not going to Greek church anymore. We are now, starting today, going to make decisions about our marriage without taking in any outside opinions. It is the two of us. And I feel really sad that we've been together for 17 years, because this was a couple of years ago, before we could actually say, listen, no, we are cutting out all the noise and we are going to connect and figure out what our priorities are as a couple for our family. Since then, my relationship with my mother has changed in ways I never thought were possible. And because she sees me and she sees him and she sees the way that we love each other and we work together, and she sees the way that we are like happy in ways that we weren't even when we were engaged or newlyweds. And so it's not that she wanted me to be a certain way in order for her to accept me into her family. She wanted to know that I was going to love them back. She wanted to know that I was going to love her son. She wanted to know if something happened to her, that I would love her husband so much that I would make sure he's taken care of, because that's what I've realized, even since I finished my book, is that in that culture, if you don't have any daughters, people say, like, you better pray for a good daughter-in-law, because like your sons are never going to take, even if they're great, they're not going to take care of you like the way that like a daughter could or would.
Right.
So yeah, things have just the possibilities that are now in front of us in our family are just something that I want for everybody, for marriage to be more fun, for parenthood to actually be more enjoyable. I mean, I always did see some skating parents who seemed to enjoy their kids, but I couldn't quite figure out how that worked. But now, I really like my kids, Jane.
Well, that's great. And I also think that the story that you just told about, because I remember in the book that being sort of together was almost like having, or close together, having the conversation about, the two of you and leveling with him, and him finally responding emotionally back the way that you needed him to. But then also when you found the birth announcement, like you said, recognizing that sometimes I think we do put things on, our spouse, thinking again, like, it's your mom, you deal with this, and understanding that, well, just because it's their mom, maybe they're not the best person for the job. Maybe they're not the most capable communicator. And I can tell, obviously, just from talking with you, that you're an excellent communicator, and you have a way of conveying things that, again, I'm sure your husband would not be comfortable, talking to his own mother in that way. But from you, I could see her almost accepting certain things easier.
I think so. And I think that there are two parts in when you have a really, really hard conversation with someone else. I think all of us have like at least one thing that like we feel like we could never say to someone close to us. But I got to tell you, that's not going away until you say it. It's not going to go away until you say it. Okay. And you may wait a really long time for them to die or for you to die. So like, it's not until you say that thing that then there's an opportunity for that relationship to go to a different level in a different place. I'm not saying it will always get better, but I'm telling you, I promise you, it's not going to be the same. Right? And when we sit down, and there are times in the book where it's Manny and I who are having this conversation. There are examples when I'm having this conversation with my mother-in-law. When we say the hardest, most difficult thing to someone else, thinking like, okay, like I swear Manny was like bracing himself, like, okay, Ashleigh's going to tell my mom these things, and like my mom may not survive it. That maybe I'll hear her hit the floor and I have to hang up and call 911 because I gave her a heart attack. Like, he's really thinking like, what is going to happen? Like, this is scary. When you have that conversation with someone, the level of trust and respect you are extending to them by saying, hey, I need to talk to you about something that's really hard. And then laying it out is extraordinary. Like they even if they can't take that what you're saying and then process it and express something beautiful back to you in that moment, you actually extending that trust and respect to them by saying, hey, I'm not going to leave this unsaid anymore. Because guaranteed they knew it needed to be said too. Guaranteed. We all know the truth, even if it stays silent. We all know. And that's why I talk to my kids about all these hard things, because kids freaking know something is up. And if you don't tell them, they think it's their fault. So that is what has happened in every one of these relationships. And there have been a lot of other examples that have happened in my relationships since I finished the book too, that I may talk about on the podcast or may go in my next book, because it just gives the opportunity for the relationship to evolve up really rapidly. I don't know if anything else that can make it go faster than going through like some sort of life or death crisis together. And we don't want to be in a life or death situation every day. So having a hard conversation actually feels just as scary to you. But I have to tell you, I haven't made anybody have a heart attack yet. I haven't. Everybody's still alive.
That is reassuring for sure. But I'm wondering about what kind of trepidation, if any, that you had in writing this book and releasing it into the world, because obviously, there's a lot of potential controversy here, and I know that if this were my book and if I were putting it out there, I think I would be really terrified about what people would think, what my family would think, my in-laws would think. So can you talk to us some about that and what level of trepidation you had and how you overcame that?
Yeah, I'm still scared shitless every day. Every single day. Every day. So I started this as a screenplay 2 years before I started as a book. So it was spring 2017. I started as a screenplay because I was certain that there was no way I could actually admit ever in this lifetime that any of this actually happened. But I also knew I knew I couldn't not write the story. That was part of my realization when I started getting like so sick and so depressed. It's like, this story needs to come out or it may actually kill me. Like, I know I actually have to do this and retire from my life on the ice and all of these changes that were necessary for me to, because I coached little kids. I couldn't write a sex book and so coach little kids. It was like my position at my organization was sort of like I was the like it was similar to being the principal of a school. I'm dealing with the parents, I'm dealing with officials from US figure skating, I'm dealing with the kids. So I knew a lot of changes would have to be made in order for me to write it and put it out into the world. And that was terrifying. But I knew I couldn't not write it. And there were so many things in the world that were breaking my damn heart, like every single week in the news, in politics, right? Okay, because we're talking about like 2016 onward. And I would just be on my knees crying, Jane, like, the next piece of bad news, like the next shoe to drop, right? And I'd be like, what can I do? Like, what in the world can I do to try to help? And it was always the same thing. Check your privilege, write the damn book. I was like, okay, all the time. That's what it was. And I didn't even know what would happen with the book or where it would go or what, but I just knew I had to write it. And, I guess the next thing on my list of things that other people seem to do, that I judge them for doing is like, oh, what if you just were the person you really are and like didn't care what other people think? I mean, I care constantly. I'm always scared, but I'm like, I act like I don't. So I get more, it's not that I'm not scared. It's that I'm getting so much practice doing it anyway. And that's what I used to tell my athletes. You're never going to feel completely comfortable performing for judges and thousands of people. You're not going to feel comfortable. You just have to look comfortable. All right. That's all. That's all. So just being afraid and just doing it anyway, because
when I know it takes a lot of courage. That takes a lot of courage. As someone who also has had a memoir in the works for a long time and also has gotten the message of write the damn book. Just write the damn book. Like, just write it. Stop hesitating. Stop being afraid. Stop worrying about what everybody's going to think. Just frickin' do it.
And here's the thing I have to say too, Jane. It's not that I haven't had blowback from this book. It's not that I haven't, but it's really, really clear when I get feedback about this book, that it's coming from a really selfish and really contracted state from other people. Like, I've had people tell me how selfish I am to write this. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I asked myself every single day when I was writing this, am I just fucking selfish? Do I just want attention? Like, what is that why I'm doing this? And every day it was, no, that's not why you're doing this. So I've been able to say to those people, listen, I know you're trying to tell me that this is selfish, and I'm actually certain that it's the opposite. I am opening myself and my family, but mostly myself, up to all kinds of criticisms, all kinds of analysis, all kinds of bullshit that who would want any of that? Because I think this can help people. So I would think that's the opposite of selfish. And I know I knew I had to write the book. And then the next step was, okay, then I guess it's going out into the world. So I don't let myself second guess myself. Like, I can change my mind. I'm giving myself permission to change my mind about anything, but I'm not going to second guess myself. One of the things I did a year and a half before the book came out, I sent the manuscript to my friends, my family, my neighbors, and my kids' friends' parents. Because one of the things that my husband said was, what if our kids' friends like aren't allowed to come over here anymore because like people know we went to sex clubs? And I was like, oh, that is a good point. All right, let's send this all out now. That's like, let the cat out of the bag, because I didn't want any of that marring my publication. Like, I wanted to be like, everybody, this is me. Like, if you don't like who I am, like, Jane, people like me better. They like me better because they're like, oh, wow, your marriage isn't perfect. Your life isn't perfect. I mean, coming out with like blonde hair and blue eyes and being a figure skate, like, it's so easy to like, we have pretty Christmas cards, Jane. It's so easy to just say like, and things are always easy and nice. They're not. They're really not. So I think that we didn't lose any friendships over it. Like, relationships got closer. But it is really.
And the kids' friends' parents, were they okay?
Those are the ones who like me better. Those are the ones.
They're like, were they like, thank you for sharing this with us, or thanks for giving us a heads up, or how did they? What was the reaction from them?
Some of them would already followed me on Instagram. My very small following, I had like 1,500 followers or whatever, right? And I want to say, like, that is a great following if you're starting as a writer. I'm not saying that that's small, but it's like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that following. Like, if you love up your audience, and that was one of the things that Glennon Doyle has always said. Like, she used to have like 8 people who would read her monastery blog, right, before she ever wrote a book, and she just loved those 8 people. Like responded to, and that's why I respond to 80 DMs a day or more, because like, I love every single person that follows me. Like, thank you for following me, for watching my videos, for like reacting or sending me a DM. Like, oh my gosh, thank you. That is one of the ways that I'm reminded each day that writing this story wasn't selfish. It wasn't selfish, because so many couples are being helped by it. So many couples. And I have to tell you, the thing that I think was the hardest for people in my life who aren't okay with the book was not the story, because the story came out a while ago. It was that right away it looked like it was going to be successful. And then it's like, I think that was actually what was hard for people.
Really?
Yeah. So it's like, you gotta remember, they say like, you don't find out who your real friends are when you're at your lowest. You actually see people's true colors when you're at your highest. And
Yeah.
it's true.
That's sort of the opposite of everything I've ever heard about that.
No, because
That's interesting.
Yeah. The people, you'll see who's happy for you and who really would like you to be something else so they feel more comfortable. Yeah. But like I said, it wasn't a surprise. It just confirmed things I already knew. So there was some grief, like, oh, I always wished I was wrong about that, but I was totally right.
And you could tell just from like the comments and feedback that you were getting from friends or from whomever that you were like, oh, so you're not really down with this whole thing.
Yeah, and it wasn't about the book because I like I said, everybody, I gave it to all the people in my life like so early. Yeah, so it's an interesting thing, but I would say like every memoir is my favorite genre to read. And like Glass Castle, like North of Normal, even like Glennon Doyle never talks about like how her in-laws respond to Love Warrior. I wonder if they even talk, honestly. Here's the thing. If any family member had the veto power, no memoir would ever get published. Anne Lamott says, no family says, oh, yay, a writer. Right? But these stories these stories that I love more than anything, that I'm so grateful for, must have been hell to live and terrifying to put out into the world. Okay. I am sick. I am sick of all of the like we're so pretty, like things like in out there in media now, that I'm like, I can't be the only one who wants like a real marriage story. And you know what? From my time working with teenagers, I can deliver almost any news and make it like a little bit funny. So it's like, you know what? I can tell this story in a way that doesn't have everybody just like so depressed and like, oh my God, you know, let's object to every marriage that ever happens again because this is impossible. You know, it's like, okay, it's hard and we're okay. And there isn't actually a right and wrong way to do any of this.
So when you say that people had a problem with the book being successful, like from right off, is that more of just like a jealousy kind of thing, or what do you think that was about? I mean, that just seems, because again, I remember I was saying before we hopped on that so Allison has, and I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback there. I don't know if you're getting an echo on your. Okay. Hopefully it goes away. It did the other time. But Ashleigh has a show with Allison K. Williams. I'm sorry, I was trying to get the echo to go away. Called The Writer's Bridge. And I've listened into that a couple of times, and I know that you do a great job, you know, sharing information with writers. And I love the idea of building a bridge and not a platform. I think that's really engaging and helpful when you're a new writer and trying to, you know, kind of build a connection with your audience. But I just remember you talking about the phenomenal success that the book had. I mean, you sold, what was it? Was it like 5,000 in the first week?
5,000 in the first week, yeah. So I outsold 5 other titles on the New York Times paperback nonfiction list in that first week. And I didn't make the list, which I wasn't surprised about because it's a curated list. And it's more like, you know, like people's sexiest people alive. Like that's sort of like what New York Times is every week. It's like most influential books according to New York Times. It's not just sales numbers. So I wasn't that surprised when it didn't make the list, but I was really fucking proud that it sold as many as it did. 98% of books don't sell that many in their lifetime, and it sold that in the first week.
Right.
So, yeah, it sold really, really well. I think that I don't know.
And also for a self-published book, and I also know that you put a lot of marketing efforts into that, but still, that number, again, I you know, just for people watching who may not know about books and the publishing industry and things like that, I remember you giving some stats that day about how many books. I mean, what is it? Like most books sell what? 100?
Yeah. So most self-published books don't sell 100 copies ever. And then, so 98% of all books don't ever sell 5,000 copies. And so it's just there's a huge variety there. But yeah, the book has been super successful.
And that's
And
great. And you would
it's
think that other writers and other people in your life especially would want to cheer that on and be like, oh my God,
most are like,
amazing.
no, I got to tell you, I'm not surprised by any of it. All the people who I thought were in my corner are like in my corner times 100. So
Okay.
yeah, that is great. And other writers have been, phenomenal cheerleaders for me, because they saw me like slogging through the querying process to get an agent. They saw me like breaking up with my agent. They saw me like, just being really honest about, okay, one of my biggest fears deciding to self-publish was that none of my writer friends would want to be my friend anymore. Because I'm like, are they going to take me seriously? But again, they like me better, because I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do this my way. And I'm going to tell you, I say all the time, I can keep anyone's secrets but my own. So I'm going to tell you like how much money I spent on this and this and this and what worked and what didn't. And all of that. Like, I'm not like, I'm going to hoard my success over here in my counting house. And like, no, and Allison and I give away like tons of info for free every other week on the Writer's Bridge, because I'm a team player, and other people who can sense intentions can sense that from me, and I think that that's what my audience notices from me on Instagram and TikTok as well, that I'm there to help people. That's really why I'm sharing what I'm sharing.
Did you ever expect that once you published the book that you would become more of a relationship, marriage, hot monogamy coach for people? Did you see that coming?
You know what? I have figured out in the past couple of years. So listen, being in one industry or sport my entire life, and I think that everybody can relate to this in some way, really kept me from noticing what was unique about me at all. I knew that I liked things. I knew that I was good at certain things, but it wasn't until I left skating and came into writing. And I felt like a fish out of frozen water. Like I had no friends and I knew nothing. So I'm feeling dumb and lonely, like for like a good year. and it wasn't until then that I realized, so I've only been in this industry a year. Like I'd been reading up on things and like trying to educate myself before that, because I always wanted to be a writer. Figure skating just as a way of taking over a life like a forest fire, right? It just consumes all resources, all time, everything. Like you can't focus on anything else but that. But the only thing I wanted to be from the time I was really little was a writer. So I was new to the industry, but what I started noticing is like, so I'm the new kid in town, but I think that there are some things that I've noticed that would be helpful to other writers. And then I started the Facebook group Binders Building Platforms. I started these different things. And I was like, this is like not my place to offer advice, but I really think I could help. So let me because I talked myself out of it a lot of times before I actually just started that group. And then there were like a few hundred people in it that day, right? I
need to search for that group. Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, Binders Building Platforms.
Binders Building Platforms. Okay.
And as soon as I started that, then Allison K. Williams sent me a Facebook message, and she's like, "Hey, I've been thinking about doing a bi-weekly Q&A on Zoom about building platform. Like, would you want to have a call, see if you want to do it with me?" I was like, yeah. What I learned working with Allison and helping writers build platform is, from the time I learned something new to the time I know how to teach it is 5 seconds. It takes 5 seconds. It's just like, that's just probably why I became a skating coach when I was so young. And like, it's just when I notice something that I turn and I go, okay, team, this is how we're all going to implement this. So like just learning on the fly. And sometimes I would have 40 or 60 athletes on the ice at a time. So I got to practice this all the time. I would see someone do a twizzle and their balance was a little different on their blade. And I was like, I think that is the trick to making all of these faster and smoother. And I'd be like, pause, everyone. This is blah, 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 blah. This is what I now know about twizzles. Go do it. And I would have to say it. I would have to get that information, process it, then deliver it in a way that hopefully most of them would go do what I just asked them to do, right? That they would understand and be able to execute. And Allison's a fabulous coach too, because she was a circus director. So same thing. How do you teach someone to do the silks or rings or whatever? Yes, she was a performer. And she did improv and she did like stage plays. And it's like, you get to see when you're doing live performance if what you are saying or doing is landing with your audience. And then you have to coach your team to like do better like right away. So we both come from different backgrounds, but like we both have that performance and coaching ability. So I didn't actually realize how good of a coach I was until I started coaching writers, because I was like, oh wow, a lot of these writers have MFAs and they've been doing this for like 30 years. And here I am, not even 2 years out of the rink. So to answer your question, moving into kind of a space where I'm like coaching on relationships, it all feels natural because I'm like, whatever I'm interested in, I'm probably going to have some role coaching that as well.
That's interesting. That was really like a natural transition for you.
It is. And you know what? My therapist says, Ashleigh, that is just one of your superpowers. Listen, you got a very good brain this time around. You got a very good brain. And when you can use it in this way, it fills me up so much. And then it gives me something to offer back as well.
Well, and I also think that it's great that you went back and unearthed this childhood dream that you had of being a writer and making that happen for yourself. And again, being brave enough to, share your story and share the hard stuff and the embarrassing stuff and maybe the things that, you would rather not really admit to the world. So I think it takes a lot of courage to do that.
Thank you.
I commend you for that.
Thank you. I just want to say too, one of the things that I thought about when I was writing it was I would write to myself like, yeah, it's brave for you to do this. It's brave. And then I actually stopped referring to it that way for myself. And I started to think, okay, wait, some people are outing themselves to the whole world just by the fact that they exist. Okay. Like trans individuals, like people who are gay, people of color in our community here in Pennsylvania. That's a little bit like Pennsylvania. And I thought, okay, whoa, wait. So many people don't have the choice about being public or being honest about something that someone else is going to judge them for. So thank you for that. But I do say, listen, I was safe sharing these things, right? I'm safe saying like, oh yeah, I was in love with another man and seeing him behind my husband's back. I'm not going to get stoned for that. I'm not going to be cut off financially for that. I'm not going to, so but for that reason, how can I not share it?
Absolutely. So what do you hope that people will take away from the book?
I hope people give themselves a break. Give themselves a break and realize the awesomeness that is already inside of them. This sounds kind of like trite and cliche, but honestly, I always thought I will feel okay with myself when I've achieved X. And then I would get there, wherever you go, there you are. And I would still not be happy with myself. So I would like people to take a look at the relationship they have with themselves and then see what kind of potential blooms in all other areas.
I think that's great. I think that's great advice. And I think that after reading the book too, you definitely get the sense of you coming to a more peaceful and full and loving place in your life. And I could almost feel throughout the book when you were, reaching, for your husband's attention and just feeling so unfulfilled. And so it's great just to have seen you work through that and that you were both able to work through that and come to a better place. So I think that's really great. So do you worry about your kids reading the book? I'm sorry, just as a fellow mom and memoir writer, I got to just toss that out there. So do you worry about them reading the book someday?
This is funny.
Okay.
2 things. 3 things. From the time they were really little, I have always said to them, like, if you get married or if you don't get married, like when I'm making pancakes, for example, I'll be like, oh, when you grow up, if you get married, you can teach your family this. If you have kids, if you don't have kids, like it's always very like this. And it's also like, if you marry a man, if you marry a woman, and it's a conversation that we have. We even have conversation about gender identity. Like, okay, we thought you were all boys when you were born. Do you feel like a boy? So we talk about these things. We've also talked about not all relationships, not all adult intimate relationships are monogamous. This is what monogamy means. This is what non-monogamy means. This blah, blah, blah. Okay, mom. Okay. Then they want to just go back to the iPad or whatever. All right. So there's been the framework always of like every family does things differently. Every couple is allowed to choose what is good for them. Every family chooses different video games that are okay at that house or not okay at this house. Like these are just, every family gets to make their own rules. All right. And sometimes we may seem really strict and sometimes we may seem like way more lenient. And that's just how life is. Every family gets to choose. So they knew that my book was for grownups and they know that sex is something that's for grownups. And so my littlest, he was like 6 at the time. When I was still writing it, probably writing the first draft, we were cuddling at bedtime because he still sleeps with me every night. And I thought he was asleep. And Jane, he said, Mom, I said, yeah, bud. And he said, what if your book doesn't get published because there's sex in it? And I said, oh, buddy, do you think like I may get in trouble? And he goes, yeah. And you could tell like he like didn't want to say anything, but he's like, I can't let her write this whole book and then her be in trouble because this is against the rules, right? And I said, oh, buddy, I said, grown-ups love that kind of thing. I said, actually, there was this one series that the writing was horrible, and it was a trilogy. So there were 3 books. That, like the writing was so bad, but it was all about sex, and it sold millions of copies, and they made 3 movies. And he goes, oh. Well, in that case, you should just put penis, vagina, sex on every page. So if anybody needs a developmental editor, my son Nico is available. Okay, great advice. He's for commercial. I mean, he's got like a more commercial. Okay. So, okay, great. All right. The next part is just in January, I would say January or beginning of February, right before pre-orders were opening. I was finalizing I was designing my cover. A lot of weird things happened that like my cover plans kept like just getting, this is for a different conversation, but, and finally I had my favorite tarot card illustrator. Her name's Chris Ann Donnelly from Canada. She's a Hay House author as well. Designed my cover. Okay. Came up with a bunch of different ideas. One of them was like really wild. And it was like, I think that her assistant had misunderstood like the swing part. And it was like this like bouffant, like hair. It was like sort of like swing era style with like a poodle skirt. And like, my hair like had this big, like, and I was like, and the makeup that was on, like it was the photo that's on the front of the book, but like the makeup was really crazy. And I was so excited to get my cover design right. You know, writers always like they're excited to see the cover and like terrified they're going to hate the cover. Okay, so I hated the cover. I hated it. And so they sent it to me and I was in the car going to like the sports stores, Dick's Sporting Goods with my kids. And I was like at a red light, I was like, oh my God. And I passed it back and Jack and Luke, so they're 14 and 12 now. They were like, no, this will not do. Like, no, this is not okay. Right. And I was like, I don't even know if I want to publish this, but I was just like, no. Okay. And then Luke, he's like zooming and scrolling and he goes, Mom, why is it called swing anyway? And I said, okay, well, you know how I'm like crapping my pants and ready to cry. Cause like, I'm like, my cover's not, this is horrible. And so I said to him, but you know how I told you before about how some couples are monogamous and non-monogamous, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, listen, sometimes that's called swinging. If you as a couple are going to date other people, and Daddy and I thought that maybe we wanted to date other people, you know, stay married, but date other people. And that was really complicated. And we realized really soon, yeah, that's not a good idea. But what we also realized were there were a lot of things that we could do to make our marriage better. I said, do you guys have any questions about that? And Luke said, so is she going to fix your hair on the cover? So I got home from Dick's Sporting Goods and I was like, the kids know why it's called swing. They know that we're failed swingers. And he's like, and Manny's like, okay, then check that box.
And once again, difficult conversation that you handled. You're like, I got this out of the way.
I was like, I talked to them about it in the car. He's like, of course you did. Of course you did.
But I think so many times too, being open and honest in a brief and age appropriate way for kids can also minimize the situation. Really, I mean, I've had things come up with my kids at times too, where again, like if you just give them an answer like you did, that it's open, it's honest, it's giving them the definition, and then a lot of times they're like, oh yeah, all right, let's move on. Like, this is boring, whatever.
Why is that even a big deal?
And then you're like, okay.
Honestly, when they think about, like, they're not like super into pop culture, but they like love sports, you know, and like, you know, this basketball player, I'll be like dating this Kardashian, and then they'll be dating that person. And like, I think that their ideas about monogamy and being exclusive are so different. Like, to just think, oh yeah, so they were dating other, like, oh, is like, it never affected them. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like, oh, then mom made me go out for dinner with her new boyfriend. It wasn't like something like that, right? It wasn't,
right.
You know, it wasn't, they were sort of like, oh, like, that's your business. Okay. You know, it wasn't a big deal. So will the kids read my book? I don't know. I don't know if they will. I'm not sure if they'll be interested in reading it.
Yeah.
If they read it, they read it. I know they are damn proud that I wrote a book. And
That's awesome.
There's something interesting too about this generation of kids growing up with social media. They are not as embarrassed of their parents if their parents look cool online. So on TikTok, they love when the neighbor kids come over with like another friend and say like, Jack and Luke's mom, she's a writer, you know, and her videos go like viral on TikTok. His eyes like get big, and Jack and Luke are like, yeah, my mom's cool. And I'll ask my kids, like, they don't have their own TikTok accounts, but they've seen my TikToks, and I'll say, did you have any questions about what that meant? And they're like, no, I don't really care. So like, if it goes over their head, it just goes over their head, and it's fine. It's like not a big deal. So I think that there's a bit of a shift in like, teenagers think everything their parents do is embarrassing, to like, oh yeah, my mom figured out the algorithm, and like, you haven't yet, even though you're dancing all the time. So I think there's like some street cred with the kids or something that I think is insulating me a bit.
I think that's really interesting. And I think that's true. You know, I only started this show, you know, back in June of this year, but it was really interesting to me that I was asking my kids for feedback about like, oh, so I've got this many YouTube views in like a couple hours. Like, is this good? And they're like, yeah, that's good. Like, that's really good. And I'm sitting here going, okay, I have no idea. Like, this is good to know. And like you said, it makes that connection. And I think my kids probably think that I'm cool for doing this show too. And it's just kind of like, oh,
I think it's really great. I think
they won't let me sing and dance in the car or any of that. I like, because that's embarrassing and we can't do that.
Listen, I think it's really cool because like, we're seeing this reciprocity in generations. Like, we're seeing like, oh, like, we're supporting our kids in their dreams, and they're seeing us having new opportunities to tap into our dreams and our potential as adults. And I just think like, isn't this an amazing way for it to be, instead of like have, you know, your parents in the job, you know, you're a kid, your parent has a position at a certain company, that's where they are until they retire. Like, I think it's such a cool thing that our kids are seeing us branch out and do things in different ways. And that reminds me, I got kicked off one of my live streams on TikTok because I was doing a live video. Someone made a comment about like spitting or swallowing. And I was like, what? And I repeated the comment. And then it was like, the video came right down. And then I was like, oh, I just got kicked off my TikTok. And Jack was like, what did you do? And I said, you know, just someone had like a rude comment. And he goes, Mom, streamers know to never repeat the comments. And I was like, oh, I'm a streamer now? He's like, you should know better. You know, so I was just like, oh. And then Luke chimed in. He's like, oh my God, Mom, you don't do that. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, so it's like interesting because because they're so tech savvy that like I get to learn from them too. And even like Luke, when he was 11, being my manager, showing me how to post the first thing on TikTok. So then when I joined the TikTok Creator Fund, he's like, so what is my cut I get each day? Like what you get from TikTok.
Yeah.
And I was like, God, I'll buy you some new sneakers.
Right.
But yeah, it's just, I don't know. My parents were entrepreneurs, my in-laws too, but it's just kind of cool how that spirit can, you know, just flow all around with the kids when they see the parents doing different ventures like this.
Yeah, I agree. So it sounds like you've got a lot going. So you are providing guidance to writers, you're responding to your 80 DMs a day, you're providing relationship coaching, you're doing videos on social media. You've got a lot going on.
I do. And it's really nice. I'm starting to assemble a team. So I hired an assistant. She's my 21-year-old niece from Winnipeg. I hired her in January to help me with the launch because I knew I wasn't going to be able to field. First of all, it was like, I'm not going to be able to field all the emails for pre-orders for people who want the audiobook, because I've been sending out the audiobook for free when people buy the paperback. And that's one of the huge perks of publishing independently, is that I can do whatever I want, like my book, my rules. And because I've been really trying to push paperback sales, and it's independently published books usually are majority ebook sold just through Amazon, and 80% of my sales have been paperback. And a lot of those, and a lot of those have been through independent bookstores, just because I've been educating my audience on the importance of independent bookstores. So I have my assistant, Gina, who helps me with a lot of the parts of this. And also I've gone through a few Fiverr guys to help with my IT needs and like making my website more robust. So I have a really great partner there, Hamza, who is now, we're switching over so that I can host all of my video content on my website. So if TikTok goes away tomorrow, or Instagram, like all of my video content will be hosted there. And I'm also going to have, by the end of October, same time my website launches, I'm going to have members only content. So additional videos and this kind of, some of my videos get taken down on TikTok because they're too detailed. They still live on Instagram, but they're too detailed. But the reason I have to answer so many DMs a day is because sometimes I have to give detail that's even a little more explicit, like about a position, or about, like, I get a lot of questions from guys like, how could I last longer? And like one of my suggestions is to like pregame, and to explain exactly what I mean there, like ejaculating before you're into it. Like, I just wish that I could have a little bit more leniency and like what I'm able to share with people, and that I wouldn't have to type it all of those times on the DM. So there's going to be members only content that's going to be like bonus videos and reflection questions on some of the videos. Like if you and your partner watch this together or whatever, or questions to answer separately. And so that's going to be a monthly subscription. And those people will get my access to my podcast 2 days early. So my podcast will drop on Thursdays.
I forgot about the podcast. The podcast too.
Yeah, the podcast. And the podcast is going to be like, I want to do one episode all about faking orgasms. I want to do one episode all about porn, because I get a lot of questions about like, hey, what's your stance on like porn in a relationship? Because a lot of people have, really complicated feelings around their partner watching porn, even if they want to support sex workers. Like, and okay, is this inherently problematic, or is it just the way that most of it's made is problematic? And like, how does it work in a relationship, or how does it not? And I would love to bring in experts to talk about this, just to like expand on these conversations that are hard to really, some things I don't touch in 30 seconds because I can't do it justice. Porn is one of those things. How I'm going to be talking to my 14-year-old about sex now that he has a girlfriend, and they actually had a blanket over their laps the other night when I walked in, they were watching a movie. I mean, okay, that's a whole different thing than when he was like, 6, and I was talking about the foxes across the street mating, to make their like pups or kits or whatever they're called. So the podcast is really going to take a deeper dive into my most frequently asked questions. And that'll drop on Thursdays. It's going to launch actually October 28th. And then so members are going to get access to the podcast 2 days early. They're going to have the additional content. And for the writers who are here, listen, when we are making a ton of content, we want to make sure it's going to the people who are going to really appreciate it. And we have the opportunity now to monetize that in different ways. So it's not just about book sales, right? It's not just about book sales, because book sales, even though my book is selling fabulously and I'm making money off of it every single day, usually people do not get rich from selling a book. And it's like, the speaking, it's the coaching, it's the other things. So there are, I just want to explore these other options. And instead of like, going on Patreon or Substack or things like that, I'm like, okay, what can we actually do that we can self-host so that we have more control over it? Just like we're always told as writers, like the only owned media you really have is like your email list, right? Because you can contact those people directly. So I want to take that to another level with offering content, and just see, then you don't have to worry about the algorithm and this and that. I'm still going to cross-post everything in the other places. But to have a place of my own where things can live, that, sometimes when a video gets taken down on TikTok, I'm not allowed to post for a couple days, and I just want, and it's when I'm giving my very best advice that happens. It's not like I'm messing around and wearing something revealing. But I'm just trying to get to more details that I think are going to help people.
Well, Ashleigh, thank you so much. I know we've had such a great conversation. Thank you for taking all this time out of your day to come and share with us, both about Swing and about your life and about the things that you're working on. And I'm just so glad to have had you here on Author Talks. And I just wish you much success with the book and everything that you're working on. I can tell you've got so much strategy and everything figured out. And I wish I could work with you at some point.
Yes, awesome. And I have, just for the authors who are watching this now, I have one coaching spot left for 2021 for one-on-one coaching. And if anybody wants to get on the list for either 30-day or 90-day coaching in the new year, and wants to talk payment plans or just getting their name on the schedule, contact me soon about that. I say, like, my coaching is either free or premium. I can't really go in between. I can't even figure out how to price like what I would do for like 1 hour strategy session with someone, because I know I would spend hours and hours on their social media before and after trying to figure out how to do it. So all my coaching starts with a full manuscript read, whether it's a book that's already published or work in progress, or for writers who have essays in different places, it'll up to 80,000 words of collected pieces, so that I can really try to figure out, okay, here's what you care about and write about and are fucking smart about. Here is how we can attract the audience that is going to love what you are offering. So it is a lot of work up front to try to figure that out, but I love it. And it's already going so well. So people can find me at Ashleigh Renard in all the places. And I'm so happy to be.
I admire you for being in all the places too.
Oh yeah. The busiest place to be is my brain. So going in. So being in all the places out in the world is actually like, okay, it feels like I sort of get my bearings.
Well, again, thank you so much. Everybody go get Swing, support Ashleigh's work. And we just thank you for being here, and thanks for all that you're doing.
It was so fun. Thank you so much, Jane.
Thanks. Well, we will be back next week with Allison Hong Merrill talking about 99 fire hoops. So look for us next Saturday. And
I
thanks
love Allison
for watching. Yeah,
it'd
be great.
Yeah.
Thanks again so much.
Thank you.